This is everything that you need to know about the 2024 annual meeting of Jehovah's Witnesses in 10 minutes. We got the privilege of knowing the new governing body member Gage Flegel's personality a little bit more, and it turns out he's a bit of a jokester, not just in the way that he dresses, but in the way that he talks.
What a beautiful group of Jehovah's precious servants. Maybe we'll coin a new expression today, gray beards of righteousness. Brother Jeffrey Jackson will discuss the theme, Don't Be Surprised by Sudden Changes. Brother Jeff, you have our attention. Coming soon. Well, soon has arrived. Let's now enjoy. Well, now the time has arrived for us to praise Jehovah in song. We look forward. We know you can do it.
Straight from a can of beans and onto your screen, this jolly green giant, he really likes to make you giggle a little bit, but he's not the only governing body member that's looking for a laugh.
Now, I know there are many gray beards here, but I understand that none of you were present on that occasion.
Now, this was a pretty common theme amongst a lot of the people that gave talks. They were joking about the beards, which I find a little bit fascinating because it's such a new change, and to be making jokes and laughing about it, it seems to be you're laughing at yourself. The only reason that this is funny is because you guys were enforcing this nonsensical rule, especially in America, for decades. You were negatively affecting people's lives for so long, and now it's all just a big joke to you. But I don't know if it will go over that well for people that don't like to look at everything that they believe and hold dear in a religious context as nothing but a big joke. Speaking of jokes, there was a weird moment where people were meant to be clapping, but instead they were laughing. And I have no idea exactly what happened, but I just want to show you. I enhanced the audio, so if it sounds like it's weird, just so you could hear the actual laughter. But take a listen.
Like passengers in a car that is increasing in speed, do you sense the momentum of what Jehovah's organization is doing today?
So after he gets done talking about how the organization is growing and speeding up and moving forward, and he's looking for a clap, people immediately started to laugh. And after an awkward silence, then they started to clap. What happened with that whole exchange, I have absolutely no idea, but I just found it funny that when he's talking about the growth and speeding up of the organization, people's immediate response was to laugh at him. The biggest announcement from this annual meeting was that 2 new governing body members were added to help rule over all Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide, and they brought the oldest member of the governing body to make the announcement.
We must allow the next generation to come up so they too can enjoy unique privileges in glorifying Jehovah. With that in mind, it is a pleasure to announce that 2 additional brothers have been appointed to serve as members of the governing body. Brother JW began his full-time service in 1989 and Bethel service in 1990.
Now, it was pretty obvious, at least to me anyway, that he really didn't want to be giving this talk. He didn't really want to be making this announcement. And if you watch the whole thing, it really shows how little he really cares about making this announcement. And it seems like he's almost put off by it. But that's neither here nor there. So the 2 new governing body members that are added, one of them has a rather interesting backstory that I'm sure we'll get a little bit more information as time goes on, but I made an entire video that was covering exactly what his background was. I do find it curious how here, when he's making the announcement and on their website, it specifically says that this Jody guy was a Bethelite or started his Bethel service in 1990. When it appears he went off to do other things, whether that was for Watchtower or something else. I mean, starting real estate companies, this, that, and the third. It seems like since 1990, he hasn't been at Watchtower headquarters doing Bethel service for that time. So it's interesting that they put it that way, because it feels like they want Jehovah's Witnesses to think that this is someone that has been at Bethel for the last 30 years, when it doesn't really appear that that is the case. Anyway, we can't really say for sure, but as they always do, they'll have a life story, so we'll be able to get a little more information from the horse's mouth exactly where this guy has been and what he's been up to. Now, Garrett Loesch did mention there that they need to prepare the next generation. So apparently Watchtower has forgotten that they had reworked what a generation is entirely. And now they're saying, hey, we need to prepare the next generation of Jehovah's Witnesses. And that theme was very loud and clear throughout this entire annual meeting. They want to get people in positions of power that are younger. There is much work to do, so we need young people to become overseers for the future of the organization. So they were not too shy about planning for their future. So gone are the days when Watchtower was, oh man, the end is right around the corner. Man, it could be at any moment in time. Always keep it right there. It could be next week. Who knows? No, they were using expressions and terms talking about young people planning their life, looking forward into the rest of their life in this system. So I'll just play one little clip here, just showing how desperate the governing body members are to get younger people involved in the organization so that way they can stay afloat.
So much work is being done, there is a need for more workers to keep up with this work. And in this talk, we're specifically going to talk about the needs at Bethel and in theocratic construction. Well, what is the need? In Bethel, we have a constant need for spiritually qualified men and women who can help carry the load of the ever-increasing and complex work. And there is a particular need for young brothers who can apply to come to Bethel and be trained and in time qualified to serve as overseers or to take the lead in departments such as the service department or public information department, hospital information department, and many others.
Yes, they are upfront in telling Jehovah's Witnesses that they need to start training a next generation of overseers, people to take the lead in the organization. So they're planning on staying here for a very long time. Now, there was a really interesting moment with Jeffrey Jackson, apart from him making a joke about beards, where I think he had a little Freudian slip, perhaps. Take a listen.
I don't know about you, but me, when that report came out, just how many partakers? And what were we thinking? Well, probably, maybe we didn't say it, but we were thinking, the number will go down, 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 and there'll be just a couple of old guys in a wheelchair who will get their reward. Well, I'm exaggerating, but that was sort of the feeling, wasn't it? But now, what have we seen in recent years? Those numbers have gone up and up. And not only that, younger brothers have been appointed on the governing body. Now, I know what you're all thinking. 2 new ones, how old are they? We know. You're not Googling now, but you will be.
Why on God's green earth is this buffoon telling people, don't Google, but we already know that you will? Because if you do Google the new governing body members' names, as I've talked about in a previous video, you can find some really fascinating information. Are they trying to hide in plain sight? Or I really don't know what is going on with this, but what will be curious, and I guess we'll just call Watchtower out on it right now, is if when they release this to the public, they edit this part out, they edit this so they're realizing, hey, we don't want people to Google the new governing body members' names. Watchtower, you are cowards. I spit on you and I wag my finger at you. You guys are too cowardly to allow someone to Google the name of one of their spiritual leaders, someone that will be the de facto person on earth to tell them God's thoughts. And you don't want people to Google it, so you have to go and edit your own propaganda? That's just if they do edit it out. So we'll call them sleazy little worms if they do, and if they don't, then I guess shout outs to them. Maybe it wasn't a Freudian slip, and maybe they are doing exactly what I said before. They're trying to hide in plain sight. Now, the number one thing on everyone's bingo card for the annual meeting was a change to disfellowshipping. We know we had a little bit of an adjustment back in August, but people were really waiting to see, are they going to get rid of it altogether? Well, the governing body did address their stance on disfellowshipping and removing people from the congregation. Take a listen.
Well, throughout the scriptures, we see Jehovah's warm appeal to wrongdoers, urging them to repent. At Zechariah 1 and verse 3, we read that Jehovah told his prophet Say to them, 'This is what Jehovah of armies says. Return to me, declares Jehovah of armies, and I will return to you.'" But does our increased understanding of Jehovah's mercy here mean that his righteous and just standards have somehow been changed? So to answer a question from earlier, James 1:17 tells us that Jehovah does not vary or change. And quoting Jehovah himself, Malachi 3 and verse 6 says, "I am Jehovah, I do not change." So then, Jehovah doesn't change, and his standards as to what is right and wrong have not changed. That is why recent adjustments to our view of God's mercy are just that, adjustments to our view or understanding. Have you been able to adjust? And because Jesus doesn't change, he still has the same desire to drive out what is bad. Since sin is still on the earth, the elders will continue to remove unrepentant ones from the congregation.
So no, disfellowshipping is not going, or removing isn't going anywhere. I'm just going to keep calling it disfellowshipping. That's what I know it as. It doesn't really matter. I don't have to use Watchtower's terms anymore. I'm not subject to their rules. But I thought this talk had one of the more interesting things in it that I don't know if anyone is talking about or even really noticed. Now, it's funny because I was going to be taking notes, didn't really need to take notes during the annual meeting, but this was the only note that I ended up taking. So let me just play that back for you one more time in case you missed it.
"I am Jehovah, I do not change." So then, Jehovah doesn't change, and his standards as to what is right and wrong have not changed. That is why recent adjustments to our view of God's mercy are just that, adjustments to our view or understanding. Have you been able to adjust?
So now we have a governing body member admitting that Jehovah has his standards, and those are set. You know, his mindset, his standards, those are just set in stone. And the adjustments that the governing body make are, to their viewpoint, are just that, adjustments to their viewpoint. He is explicitly saying that Jehovah isn't talking to the governing body to make rules. Jehovah isn't leading the organization. When adjustments are made, he's not saying that Jehovah is making the adjustment because Jehovah's standards are already set. He's saying that it's the governing body just deciding. And in my memory, I know they've talked about being fallible or getting things wrong, but I don't remember them outright looking Jehovah's Witnesses in the eyeballs and saying, when we make adjustments, it's just us making stuff up. God already has his standards. We don't really know what they are, but we just do the best we can. It was a very strange thing for him to say. I'm not entirely sure he knew exactly the implication of what he was getting at, but I found it absolutely amazing because normally we would hear something like, oh, you know, we're fallible, but you got to trust us because God's using us. Well, you're making it now sound like God wasn't using you, because if God had his standard already set and your adjustments are just you changing your mind, then where is the correlation that God or Jesus is actually using the organization? We also got a little update about what's going on with Stephen Lett. We haven't seen him quite as much lately, and he's been having a little bit of back problems, apparently, so he had to give this talk sitting down. Now, to be completely honest, he didn't really say anything that interesting, other than trying to focus on being trustworthy and always fulfilling promises, not something that Watchtower is very good at.
First and foremost reason, because the God who cannot lie has promised it. Revelation 21:4, Jehovah says that he will wipe out every tear and death will be no more. And then in effect, he publicly signs that promise. In the next verse, verse 5, he says, "Write, for these words are faithful and true." In other words, write it down where everyone can see what I promised, and I certify It will happen. I guarantee it will.
Other than that, he did raise one interesting point, and that was,
Why do some people reason that living forever would be boring? Well, some reason that if everyone lives forever, they're all perfect. Will they not all eventually become carbon copies of each other, with variety being lost? Well, that reasoning is not sound.
now, the only reason I think this is interesting is this is something that I've talked about quite a bit in the past. Now, I don't think that the governing body knows who I am, nor do they really care. I don't think that anyone at Bethel watches videos that ex-Jehovah's Witnesses make or anything like that. But what I firmly believe actually happens is that people who are actively going to meetings, maybe questioning, or maybe they don't believe in the faith anymore, but they are still active within the congregation, they do watch points that ex-Jehovah's Witnesses bring up in YouTube videos, and they pass those along to the governing body. So they might not directly be responding to anything that we say here on YouTube, but they might be indirectly responding to some of the things that we say here on YouTube. And I think this is kind of a funny example of that. I imagine a situation where it's something that, the ex-witnesses are kind of talking about, man, how boring would paradise actually be? And it eventually, with enough people writing letters, asking questions of circuit overseers, are, when they're polled and say, hey, what's going on in your area? Then that might make its way up to the governing body, and so he responds to it. The way he responds to it is absolutely abysmal. It's not even worth breaking down or going into very much. And that just leads us right into the very last talk, which was very exciting because David Splain had something to say.
Jehovah is also glorified when his servants respond to the leading of his Spirit in their Christian life, when they become more humble, more loving, more trustworthy. Now, if you're an appointed man, have the elders found you to be more reasonable, more tactful, more yielding over the years? When they see those changes in us, our brothers and sisters don't fail to give credit to Jehovah God, and Jehovah God is praised. So in 2025, let's give serious thought to ways we can give God glory.
So yes, appointed ones, they need to be more loving, reasonable, and tactful. That's not really qualities that most of us would associate with elders. They are some of the most unreasonable and some of the most unyielding. In fact, a lot of people's experience with elders is that they will shove their ideas on whatever congregation they attend. So much so that if you've been a Jehovah's Witness, you're very familiar with this phenomenon. Every single congregation has its own personality. All of them. Everyone will be slightly different. And the single thing that will decide the personality, the vibe of a congregation is the elder body. Coincidence? I think not. Now, because of this, that's why I think a lot of people have this concept of elders being unyielding and unreasonable. So again, I think they're trying to update their image because their image doesn't look super great and it's not very good for PR. Anyway, that was everything that you need to know about the 2024 annual meeting in somewhere around 10 minutes. I probably went over time, but that's okay. No one's grading me. I'll see you next time.